We are now live on YouTube.
Okay. How is industry reacting to the new opportunities? I mean, are you fully operational now, or it's still 40-50%?
I think in terms of if you talk about businesses are. Am I audible?
Yeah, clear.
Okay, so I think businesses are kind of, what we see is that, what I personally see is that businesses are impacted at this point in time, though things are kind of improving, and they are different for different industries.
I know.
I think somewhere, wherever, I think one of the things is that wherever there is a physical presence required, those businesses are kind of impacted more.
I know. Yeah.
Businesses, but and one of the realizations that we have is that what we thought is not possible remotely is kind of possible remote.
It's becoming remotely.
The biggest realization I think that everyone has. 6 months back, if anybody would have said that the entire companies would work from home, somebody would have said that it's not possible at all.
It's not possible.
And today we say that it is possible. So I think there are problems but possibilities as well. And we see that the complete recovery may I think maybe some time away, but I think there are early signs of recovery, and there are new ways of doing things as well, which are kind of being talked about, and possibilities being explored at a level which was never there before, because a sense of urgency is there in almost every sphere of life.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge, I mean, COVID is one, but one of the things nobody realized that can compound the problem is the Chinese problem. And in a way, industry became so integrated with China that there was a huge dependence for some industries on Chinese raw material, and all of a sudden then finding a new source, new supplier, and doing it themselves in India, and because there are some industries where there's a gestation lag where you can't start doing it from the very moment. So I think that's the added difficulties some of the industries have got now. That, for example, pharmaceutical, they have to source API from China, and for leather, for furniture, these industries kind of became quite dependent on China. So that's probably compounding the problem. If you're doing it in India, then the costs go higher, and some of them are exporting. So that is leading to some changes. They say that every crisis leads to some opportunities. Probably here we might have some opportunities that we may realize it later. But sometimes when the problems come, they come in groups. They come in multiples.
Excuse me, sir. I think we are ready to begin.
Okay.
Shita, could you please just start the beginning?
Sure. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Warm greetings to everyone. I welcome you all to this webinar on behalf of Urja, the Commerce Department of Sri Guru Gobind Singh College of Commerce. The topic for today is envisioning opportunities and managing finances the road ahead under the guidance of our esteemed principal sir, Dr. Jatinder Veer Singh, our convener, Dr. Kavalgil ma'am, head of the department, Dr. Gurminder Kaur ma'am, and our faculty, and most importantly, our distinguished speakers on the panel. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar. Our first edition was a huge success where we had accommodated more than 600 live audience, having more than 3,000 views on our YouTube channel. We will have perhaps more than 700 attendees. Some of them will be on Zoom and the rest will be watching it live on YouTube. Founded in 1884, our college is an epitome with a vision to provide a blend of resources and environment for all-round personality development of its students. It is renowned as the best college for business economics and is ranked among one of the best commerce colleges in India. The college offers 8 courses for undergraduate and postgraduate programs, housing around 2,000 students. Urja, the Commerce Department of Sri Guru Gobind Singh College of Commerce, having a team of inquisitive students learning and working in the field of commerce, finance, marketing, and entrepreneurship, with an aim to impact the student community and taking initiatives for the development of each student by sharing and gaining knowledge. Presenting to you the core team of the year 2020 to 21. I would now request the head of the Commerce Department, Dr. Gurminder Kaur ma'am, to address the audience and share her words of advice on today's agenda.
Thank you so much, Ishika. A very pleasant good evening to our principal, Dr. J.B. Singh, our esteemed panelists for the day, Mr. Pankaj Dubey, Mr. Saurabh Jain, and Mr. Vipin Kapuria, my dear friends from the faculty, and students from in and out of India. I, Dr. Gurminder Kaur, on behalf of Sri Guru Gobind Singh College of Commerce, extend a very warm welcome to you all on this second webinar organized by our very enterprising and motivating team Urja on the topic Envisioning Opportunities and Managing Finances, the Road Ahead. Albert Einstein had once said, in the middle of difficulties lies opportunities. So much like his description, we are in the middle of difficult times of economic and financial crisis due to the coronavirus pandemic. 2019 had witnessed the slowing down of the economy. Private investments were on a decline. Slowdown in demand was resulting in underutilized capacity. Businesses were facing liquidity crunch, resulting in high NPAs, thereby impacting health of banking sector, which resulted in further increase in the availability of liquidity. There was this need to restore the health of banking system and improve the fiscal situation by an increase in revenue collection. However, the situation was worsened by the arrival of the pandemic, which caused a sudden lockdown, subsequently shattering an already troubled economy. The pandemic has since caused a global crisis, having a threshold impact on individuals and society. It has impacted human health, economy, and finances of the individual as well as the state. The pandemic has caused the public healthcare infrastructure of even the most developed countries to be spread too thin. Due to the health crisis, individuals have been forced to stay home, away from their jobs, and manage their household and finances. This lockdown has reduced the ability of individuals to have mobility within the jobs and manage their individual finances. Subsequent government attention and funds have been directed to the same to protect the individuals from what is looming threat to their life and their livelihood. In most of the countries, financial stimulus measures have been provided, which focus primarily on providing food and relief to the poor and the vulnerable, providing money for improving healthcare primarily for its citizens, supporting small, formal, and informal sectors. Now, we all know Modi government also has provided fiscal stimulate package of 20 lakh crores, which is a mix of fiscal support, monetary support, ease of doing business for MSMEs, and other fundamental reforms. Other areas of support include delays in payment of tax, interest payment moratorium, loan guarantees of MSMEs, infusing more liquidity into banking system, etc. Now, as economies are reopening and once health crisis abates, global economies will recover, and we hope so shall India. As per the RBI report, India is already on the path of recovery. So, like every crisis which gives rise to new opportunities, this is what Principal Sir was telling us right now. After COVID, India will also be able to build an economy which is more resilient, diversified, and attractive to global manufacturers and services, as majority of businesses have faced disruptions and economy fallouts. So we have to be cognizant of changes that can be expected in different industries, especially in the area of finance. Also, we have to understand how to access these changes to turn them into opportunities in the changing sectors in our economy. So, we have with us our esteemed panel of professionals, Mr. Pankaj, Mr. Saurabh, and Mr. Vipin, to guide us in this time of uncertainty to be able to make use of maximum opportunities which will be thrown open in the changed corporate world, vis-a-vis the choices available in the area of finance, financial planning, specifically in the areas of startups, which now have a changed definition in terms of MSMEs, or before the personal financial management also. So now, before we commence with the session, let me request our principal, Dr. J.B. Singh, to please welcome our guest and give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Gurminder. All the esteemed guests, Mr. Pankaj Dubey, Saurabh Jain, and Vipin Kapuria, we all welcome you, the Urja Society of our Commerce College, and as well as others who have joined us from other colleges and around India and elsewhere. We are fortunate to have you all, you are from the leading corporates, and talking to these young students. I think this is a great service to the young people, those young students who are actually graduating at a time when conditions in the economy are not very good, and they're going through a mental stress, they're going through a difficult time, and hats off to the Urja Society for thinking that we can actually help students in terms of knowing what is happening in the corporate sector, and how those corporates strategies as to tide over the difficult times, how they are managing things, and especially how they're managing their finances. And the corporates, we know that it's not easy when the economy is doing well, the corporates also do well. When economy is not doing well, the people are locked down in their homes. It's not easy for the corporates to sustain, and especially when there is a fixed cost and the operational cost that they have to incur. The cash, some corporates have the cash flows. They're rich. Their balance sheets are rich in cash. We know they'll be able to sail through. But on the other hand, there are companies which are which are companies which are leveraged companies, where there's a lot of debt, and they have to service their debt. And during these times when the sales are not happening, so how do they tide over? So is the government assistance is good enough for them to tide over these difficult circumstances? And as I was telling that when the bad things come, they come in bundles. So the China factor and the US-China trade deals and stoppage of the air travel. So all these things, when they couple, when they combine, it makes the life of the corporates very, very miserable. So, but we would like to hear from these experts as to how these corporates are managing actually their operations, so that so that their finances, operational finances, are at least intact and they are able to sustain during this hour of crisis. It is only if the corporates do well, then we know that our economy will do well. We have seen from the China experience that for 40 years they had the double digit from 78 they had double digit growth rate of more than 10%. So that's where their per capita income, which was comparable to India in early in the last century, late last century, has become 4 or 5 times of India. So India also needs to grow at the rate of 10%. We should not be satisfied with the 4, 5, 6, 7%. We have to actually make it double digit, and that too continuously for 3-4 decades, so that we are a relatively middle income countries, and the poverty that has actually lived with us, we are able to remove that poverty and lead through opportunities for these young people who are graduating in all these years. We want students, young students have life of 50, 60 years lying ahead of them. We don't have that luxury of living that long, but we want to see in our lifetimes India developing and becoming a great economic force, so that we should also be proudly saying that yes, we live in India, and India is the land of opportunities, and we can do things better than others. We know that, as Dr. Gurminder said, that this time will lead to reawakening, redoing things, and refashioning things, and we will learn to do things differently. And who knows that probably we start doing things in a better way, and word always rewards the winners. And if we win in this battle, I think we all will be the beneficiary, and India will be a formidable force in the world, both economically and they say that like in China became economically stronger, and that's where the military might is now is something that people fear of. So India too need to focus on its economy. That it becomes economically might. Then other things, the military and political and other things, the other things, and it's a place in the world economy, they follow. So welcome all the guests. Look forward. You're all veteran, and you all belong to corporates and in the leading positions, and we look forward to hearing from you. Because if it comes from your mouth, I think we will, because this is a corporate who are actually feeling the brunt of the forces of pandemic. So we would like to hear from you as to how you are doing things in your respective domains, and it will be very informative to the students because they are also joining the work. They're going to be joining the workforce from now onwards. Many of you who are graduating this year, and hearing from you will help them in terms of preparing for a better future. Thank you, Urja team. Thank you, Dr. Gurminder, and welcome all the guests, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We will now proceed to the most important segment of the session, as we feel honored and privileged to have a panel of 3 prominent speakers with us. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in your control panel or in the comment section for those who are watching it live. I'll bring them up afterwards as we have time for questions at the end. Our first speaker on the panel is Mr. Pankaj Dubey. He is currently the CEO of D-Spin Consulting, given his significant contribution to the top companies like Intex, Hero, Yamaha, and Polaris. As a managing director of Polaris India, Mr. Dubey established the Indian operations of the world's #1 off-road vehicle, Polaris Incorporation. He has also led the joint venture of Eicher and Polaris as a CEO, and was instrumental in the turnaround of Yamaha India during his tenure as the national business head. Mr. Pankaj Dubey is a management graduate from Munirba, University of Allahabad, and an alumnus of IIM Calcutta. Apart from being an eminent TEDx speaker, he has spoken at numerous top forums, including CII's PhD Chamber of Commerce, ASSOCHAM, and various IIMs. He was one of the Black Book India's most powerful men in Luxury Top 100 in 2015 and 2016. He is also the recipient of Top 50 Indian Icons 2016 and Intellectual Icon 2020. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Pankaj sir. The space is all yours, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice introduction, and thank you, Director Mr. Singh, for setting up the context for today's meeting. So can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, today's situation is extremely tough, but as Dr. Singh said, every challenge has an opportunity as well, and we have to figure out where is that opportunity. So crisis is also the mother of invention, and that is what we are undergoing right now. We have a huge crisis, multiple crises, but how do we react? What do we do is the most important thing. And, in terms of education, I did my management in marketing and finance. And as a child, I was born in a middle-class family where it was a big challenge to go and spend too much on education. And therefore, immediately after I passed out my class 12th, I started my personal finance through earning by teaching students of my juniors or my peers, and I started earning. And so that was my first learning for personal finance. I did even my graduation and my post-graduation funding was done from my own earnings. And from there, I learned some of the basics of life and also that how should you manage yourself, because it's very important that before you go into the corporate and you start managing funds of the company, you have to be best at managing yourself and your own funds. And if you can do, only those people I see can do well in the corporate world who manage themselves well. So if I start looking at ourselves and we say, okay, what I have done in my life and what is my learnings and what are my principles and how will I grow in life, these are all related to once I have achieved something, then only I can contribute to the organization. So I'll bring some of the perspective from my experiences that may become very useful to you. And I am going to talk a few things about, I'm sorry, it's not moving. Yeah. So this is the first picture that you can see. It's a brand Polaris, world's #1 leader in off-road vehicles, Indian motorcycle, Indian chief. I headed this operation in India, and then there's another brand, if you can see, Yamaha. So every brand that you see, it gives you an emotion. Okay. Yeah. So what I have shared with you, the two brands, it's just giving you an emotion that, every brand creates an emotion. Whether you love any brand, whether it is the luxury cars or any of the luxury perfumes that you have, it has its own imagery, and that imagery has to be delivered. The promise of the brand has to be delivered. And if the brand and what they promise and what they deliver are matching, business all
start flourishing. So this is the most important learning of my life, that if you have to really do well, you have to create brand, not just a product, because product anybody can make. But once you make a brand and you give attributes to the brand, and you are able to execute that to perfection, that is what makes the difference. So if you see, there are brands which does very well, and then there are competitors who try to come and beat them with price, but they are not able to do so. Why? Because the brand has been created. And believe me, it's not just about the brand of the organization that you work for or you aspire to work for. It is also your actions are continuously creating your brand too. What you are doing today, what is Urja doing today, what Dr. Singh said today, all of that is creating a brand. How caring the director is when he's appreciating the team, how caring the people at Urja is, that they are getting every act together. They're concerned about what the speaker will speak. And so this all speaks of the brand. And that is what is very important. So every action that we are doing is actually creating a brand. And that is what delivers ultimately a good value to the brand. And that is what creates good finance to the organization. And therefore, my suggestion is that be very careful with what you're thinking and what your actions are. So it's very important to understand this basics of life before you go into big jargons and try to acquire, some things that I have to perform because of this new management technique has come. Most important thing is your basics of life. What have you learned? Like you must have heard a lot of suggestions that, okay, you should never quit, never give up. Failure is failure happens every time. But those people who get up and do well are the people who stay and who become very successful. Tough times never last, but tough people do. All these things they are not just mere statements. There's a lot of feelings attached to it. And the moment your thoughts start working in that direction, you become successful, and money is an outcome of all your thoughts and action. I would like to share here, a small, slide that I saw on the web. This is by Carnegie Institute of Technology. It said 85% of your financial success is due to your personality and ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Shockingly, only 15% is due to technical knowledge. And it hit me very hard, and I shared it. I shared it on my LinkedIn profile. And when I shared it, and I just wrote one line, your personality is the key. This has been shared, I think, around 52,000 plus times. And there are like millions of people who have seen this on LinkedIn. And why? Because it's so powerful, because you keep on acquiring degrees, okay, I get a degree for finance, or I get a degree for engineering, and then I'll go and I'll do very well. No, it is the basic, it's definitely needed. Your technology is needed, your technical knowledge is needed, your expertise is required, but much beyond that is what is your personality. And it has very good connection with what is the brand that you are creating. Not just because your personality also becomes a brand. When you're talking about some things, when you're talking about any sensitive topic, how are you behaving? It will create a brand for you. If you're talking optimistically or you're talking pessimistically, the smartness is that you have to face the challenge, but you don't have to give up. Like today's circumstances. Let's say that what's happening right now. We have a challenge. People are losing jobs. Salaries are getting cut. And the challenge of the new students, what will I do in life? I'm just graduating. And the people who had jobs, they have lost jobs. So what I can do now? How will I get an opportunity? Whether I should work or I should create my own company. What should I do? If I create my own company, would I be able to sustain? All these questions comes in. But here is where the difference of the personality comes in. So you can say, oh, nobody is getting a job, or you can say, so many people have lost a job, but the organization work has not gone. That job is still required at the organization. People have lost job because their cost has become higher over the years, because there was naturally, in India, where the inflation is also high. So the increment is also about 10% on an average. And therefore, if you talk about in few years, the salary doubles. And then the cost of the person doing the same job also doubles, and that creates an impact on the brand. And when the question of sustainability of the company itself come, many of the leaders, they take a decision, okay, we have to sustain the company. And how to sustain the company? You have to reduce the cost. In order to reduce the cost, you may reduce the salary, you may cut manpower, you may cut the fixed expenses. There's so many challenges that come in, and you take an action accordingly. So once the leader has taken this action, his job is not over, because now he has to get that job done with the people they have. And sometimes there is also an opportunity where you can have people who can work at a much lower salary. So if a student who has just passed out, he gets an opportunity to work at a place where there's an opportunity of doing a job which was being done by a much senior person, but now you get an opportunity to work over there. So it's a great challenge, but you can, if you're a great learner and the organization is willing to train and take the risk, then you get an opportunity like never before at this time. And it is a win-win for everybody, because you get an opportunity to straight away get into the groove, and the organization, the cost comes to half or 1/3, and so they are able to survive. And this is what is needed at this time. But the thought of the person will decide this. Your personality will decide. Your personality is, nothing is happening, let's lie down and sleep. And once the things become better, and when there's no COVID situation, everybody is free to move around, then we will start looking for a job. Or you can start looking for a job right now. This is a crisis where many organizations are very severely hit. This is also a time when many organizations have done exceedingly well, like pharma companies, the companies of who are into the basic needs, the food and beverage industry. They have done pretty well because the basic food needs are the same. All the e-commerce have really increased during this time, because you have to really supply. Maybe you can't supply the 360-degree product lines, but you have to supply the medicines and the basic necessities of food. And therefore, the dependence and opportunity for the e-commerce industry has been huge. You must have heard about this company, Mahindra & Mahindra. They're a great company. The leadership is great. And what they have done during this time, they felt that, okay, we can't make vehicles because everything is a slowdown, but India needs a lot of machines, and let's make some medical equipment to support the government. Now it's not their field, but they went and figured out how they can make the machines. They prepared the machine, they gave it to Government of India. Likewise, there's so many companies, they saw that their main line of business is not happening, but there is a huge demand of mask and the cleanliness drives, all the medical things that are required at this time for people to become safe. So many companies have diversified and started doing this job so that they can sustain. They may be operating at maybe 5% of the total income, but at least they're operating. So the approach to a situation can be manifold. One is you give up, or the other you do differently. Also, this is a time when you have to rethink the strategies. This is a golden opportunity for organizations to rethink how to manage their organization, what are the expenses that they can do away with, and what are the expenses they have to keep. Like a usual way of working is that you should have a nice office, you should have huge setups and number of gadgets, and then you start working, and the people have to travel all the place. Suddenly you find a new world where the movement is restricted, where you feel that why should we go to office? I mean, we are working so efficiently from home. then the cost of moving around, the cost of the persons, the individuals, cost of the organization comes down, and you're still delivering the same results. I know people who during this COVID time got appointed and promoted for the work that they have done. And I'm talking about this 3-4 months period. During this time, somebody get appointed and get promoted is because of the kind of a personality that person has and the kind of a learning and the response that the person has shown. So we have to see that, yes, there's a challenge. It's a huge challenge of a magnitude nobody ever thought. But then there are also a number of opportunities. The opportunities are also for the people who just have a 40% or a 50% reduction in salary. They should be happy that at least they have the job. The other person has lost the job. And therefore, what can I do about it? And if you look at realistically, the person's cost has also come down because he doesn't move around. So his travel cost comes down. And so the number of directly, indirectly costs that has also come down because you are not moving around. So the expenses also become minimal, and therefore you can survive. And for all the students, I have already shared that you may get an opportunity in the same organizations where they have fired people. So you can approach those organizations and you can look at it as an opportunity. Maybe you may not get 100% result. You may knock 10 doors, only one open, or maybe you knock 50 doors, only one open, but you should not leave the opportunity of knocking the door. You may get a success. Also, this is a very good time for India to become great again. India was considered as Sone Ki Chidiya, not because of any big organizations, not because of any government doing some great initiative or policies. It was because of the small traders they were making goods, and it was being exported the world over. Almost 1/3 of the world export, even during the Mughal period, was done from India. And that is why the Indian industries was very well known and they did very well. And why? Because of the small entrepreneurs. So students can actually take this as an opportunity to make a small organization. Say, okay, all the corporates, they need to bring down the cost. So I specialize in human resource or finance or some specialization. And then I will provide say 10 or 20 companies this solution where they can outsource the activity to me. And therefore, I can manage the organization and I can become an entrepreneur. You can also see that this is a great time where Prime Minister Modi has spoken about Atmanirbhar. China also is challenging at the borders, but then this also it cuts down so many supplies to India. And it is the government of India has also taken so many initiatives to increase the duty so that the people as such, the Indian economy as such does not get hit by a country which is aggressive towards us. But this is a golden opportunity to develop. I know where Dr. Singh was talking about when we are exporting, it's a big challenge. But at least domestic market, which itself is a huge market, you can cater to that. You can become self-sufficient during this time. And when you export, your cost comes down and the situation is same world over. So maybe it's a golden time for India to work towards Atmanirbharta and make small organizations work towards making all the corporates more efficient and break-even cost become much lower for organization. So this is a great time for us to relook at things. Some of these matters are very, very critical and important. This is a very favorite statement of mine. Whenever you have to do good and great in the future, you have to dream big, but don't forget to put the timelines over there. I have seen that right from being a student to become the CEO, and now I've started my own entrepreneurship journey with forming a consulting firm, DSpin. And the dream is that we have to make certain achievements with some fixed timelines. As a student, when I made a dream, my first dream was that one day I will become a sales and marketing head. That was the dream that as a student I had. Once I achieved that, and I felt that I can become even bigger than this. So let me plan to become a CEO. I put a date that by this date I should become a CEO. And fortunately, I achieved that as well. And similarly, today, I made a dream, as Dr. Singh was talking about, to eliminate poverty from India. That's my dream to achieve by 2040. That by 2040, nobody should be bekar in the country. Bekar in a sense, without car. So if every family should be with a car, that kind of a prosperity we can have. What can we do about it? And that is where DSpin will be focusing. And that is what I am looking at, that how we can have the resources so that we make schemes that becomes all pervasive, all successful across the country, across the board. Now, what are the skill sets needed in a finance aspirant? I would say that, when I was looking at the finance team, I was always looking at the person has to be very optimistic. The imagery of the finance persons is as if, he would never say approval to some good projects because he feels always that maybe something wrong is going to happen. No, what is needed is that you have to be very progressive to be and very smart to find out where to invest and where not to invest. But you have to be optimistic, at the same time full controls so that you don't lose money in any area. So you have to make the robust system, but you have to be progressive. What is the latest concept is that in this COVID time, lean management becomes so important. A job which was being done by, say, 10 people, can it be done by 2 people? That is something which is required. The lean management is like you have 10 products, and you having so many inputs, spare parts. Can you just combine it in such a way that your inventory become much lesser? You're very light on inventory, and your products still has the same imagery. So the lean management, where we are looking at the entire system of the inflow, outflow, becomes very, very progressive, and you make this lean management an integral part of yourself. Also, very important is flexibility. As I shared, Mahindra and Mahindra were trying to do something very different from making cars and two-wheelers. And they said that, okay, let me help the government by making some equipments, medical equipments. Even in manufacturing, you have to look at, the traditional way of manufacturing is that, there is a layoff time, there is a changeover time, and therefore a lot of losses happen if the market demand changes, because you have to shift the machine from one place to another or from one product to another, and there's a layoff time. So all this needs to be also factored into your skills, where you have to look at that. You have to be more flexible in manufacturing, and definitely on management, that we have a set idea. We have to come to office 9 o'clock to 5:30, and today nobody is coming to office, but you have to ensure that in today's circumstances also everybody is working from home and giving the same output. And therefore the flexibility of the management, because what you have to look at the end result, the progressive approach, so that your end result remains the same or very productivity increases even at all times. And finance persons always have to look at investing in people and technology, because technology is very, very important for the success of any organization. But more important than that is the people. And therefore, you have to be very generous towards the people to have, the result-oriented people who really make investments. And then the earnings of the people, individuals, have to be commensurate with the output that they are giving. So you have to get into the policies where they get more when they perform more. So these are some of the skill sets that I feel is very important for the finance person. And there are lots to talk about, but I think we have limited time, and therefore I would like to end here. But we will have a question answer right at the end of this session. And till then, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your precious words. That was indeed insightful. Our second speaker for the day is Mr. Saurabh Jain, sir. He is proficient and cognizant in pecuniary matters and is savvy in all gamuts of finance functions. Mr. Saurabh Jain is the Vice President of Finance at MobiKwik and an angel investor at Inflection Point Investors. He is a veteran in strategic financial planning and analysis and management reporting, having significant experience in the financial service industry. Having exemplary skills, Saurabh Sir has worked with big names such as HUL, Bharti Airtel, Tata Docomo, Interglobe Enterprises, and Zomato. He graduated from Sri Ram College of Commerce and is an alumni of IIM Lucknow. He has been an eminent guest speaker at many prestigious business schools and corporates, igniting and inspiring several budding finance enthusiasts and students. The space is all yours, sir.
I'm grateful for being invited by the Urja team and of Sri Guru Gobind Singh College, and I'm grateful to the professors, Dr. Singh, and the student community there for inviting me. It's an honor to be here, and I'll talk briefly about managing personal finances, and a little bit on what to consider, things to consider, when you step into a corporate world right after your graduation, or a MBA, or a B school, or any professional course. So I think I'll begin with in terms of what factors to look at while managing your finances, and taking a cue from what Pankaj said, that if you can manage well yourself, uh, it's highly probable that you will manage the profile that you're given by a corporate well as well. So I think the term management kind of we hear only when we kind of do a professional course, and when we kind of step into corporate world. But I think in our early lives as well, there is a lot that we learn on management in terms of how we manage ourselves while we are a student, and while we do a professional course, in terms of how well we manage our time, and what kind of investment we make in ourselves uh, you know uh, while studying, or while kind of doing a job as well. So touching upon this topic of managing personal finances, I think here we are talking about millennials, who are kind of uh, is a generation is a generation which is kind of more anxious and kind of more stressed out vis-a-vis previous generations, with respect to their money that they manage, with respect to their career, with respect to their overall lives. So so managing personal finances is obviously a very important piece for this generation. And there are a few points that I would want to begin with, in terms of what to consider while managing your finances, and while and later on while managing your career. So and these are the things that kind of I have learned over last 15 to 20 years, uh, while working, and even while studying as well. So there are 5 or 6 key things that and those are very basics, and we have kind of, you would have heard about them at some point in time in life from your parents, and maybe from somebody who has managed his finances really well. And I think these things that I'm going to say are being said by the best of minds and the richest of people on earth today. So the first thing is that while managing your finance, as you step out of college, and as you step into corporate world, and as you start earning, I think the 3 key pieces that you have to kind of keep in mind is obviously patience, perseverance, and being disciplined. And if you are being disciplined, uh, in all likelihood you will manage yourself and your finance and career really well. So what do I mean by being disciplined? Let me put it point by point. So when you start your career, when you start earning, and when you have your own money in your hand, the first thing that you would want to do is while managing your finances is, you need to have a, budget around, your expenses. As you do in a, as a corporate does for its expenses, you need to have a budget around your expenses. An ideal budget tells us, that how we should be spending our money instead of wondering, where it has gone. So a budget is really a useful tool to control our personal finances. The second piece is that, being disciplined will also mean that you will have a tight control over that. You will not spend more vis-a-vis what you earn. So, you guys are, have been born and brought up in a environment, wherein, credit cards are sold, day in, day out, and, loans are being doled out as gifts. So, there is a lot of consumerism, which is, which has picked up in last 15 years in India. And because, and that's primarily because the generation millennials, are, kind of, fond of buying the latest gadget, and fond of buying the latest car. And so there is a lot of consumerism, and which is good for the somewhere which is good for the overall economy and the industry to grow. However, from a personal point of view, you will need to be disciplined in terms of, that you don't spend more than you earn, and you are not a victim of debt. So I think the access to debt and the access to credit cards is so easy that you can easily fall in that trap. And however, being too much into debt is a sign of a weak financial life in the days to come, and you have to, focus that, you only take debt or use a credit card while doing necessary expenses, and, you don't get into unnecessary spending with these kind of instruments. So, that's one of the key pieces that we, see, which creates a lot of stress, and which creates a lot of, financial instability over a period of time in the youth. I think the youth also kind of misunderstands the credit card. They see it as a tool of, kind of easy access to credit. However, there are, strings attached to it, and having a credit card is never a bad practice. You should have it. However, spending unnecessary on those credit cards is a bad habit. So that was the next point. And so when you begin your journey, in terms of whether it is career or, financial journey, it is very important, to have a financial goal. And I would also say that, you need to have goals, financials and otherwise, and have a timeline around it, so that, you are constantly pursuing something which you want to pursue with set timelines, so that, the amount of effort, the amount of energy that you put in is in all sense, it's serious in terms of that you want to achieve it, and these are not open-ended goals that you are kind of chasing. So I think having financial goals is very important, and financial goals, to start with, can be very small, that, you need to have certain amount of savings in bank account by a particular time. You need to buy, your own home by a certain time, and buying a car by a certain time, and things like that. So having financial goals is very important. Over the years, I have seen that as people begin their corporate career, most of the time they invest in depreciating assets rather than appreciating assets. And what is a depreciating asset? You would get into buying that costly gadget. You would get into buying a fancy car, or a fancy bike. So all those things are not something which you shouldn't do. But I think most of the time, and most of your expenses would constitute typically assets which are depreciating. Instead of that, if you could put your money however it could be a very small amount, but if you're disciplined, and if you are kind of putting your money every month in appreciating assets, like you are allocating your money in investments like securities or bonds, those things are kind of that will pay you back over the years, with the help of compounding power. So I think what you do with your money is something very important in terms of how you allocate your money in terms of your buying habits. So I think so if I have to summarize in terms of being financially independent, if that is the goal that you carry when you start your career, to have a better life financially, if I have to summarize, I think you will need to have a disciplined approach in your financial spending. And ideally the approach that I took when I started my career was that rather than spending the entire money and then counting what is left at the end of the month, I would kind of allocate a fixed percentage of my income to savings, and whatever is left is something that I would want to spend in whichever way I would wanted to I wanted to spend that. So that's the approach that I had taken very early on in my career. If I have to summarize, I think having a disciplined approach, savings, every month, putting, allocating your savings in, over various investments, which could be stocks, could be bonds, securities, whatever you understand well, and not getting trapped in debt, in unnecessary debt, are key to have a financial independence over a period of time. The keys here is to strike a balance. This is not to say that you are at a stage in your life, and we are all at a stage in life wherein we want to enjoy our lives and live it up, and there is nothing wrong with that. And however, the key is to strike a balance that splurging money once in a while is okay, overdoing is not okay. So the key is to strike a balance, and you must strike a balance in terms of to have the best of both worlds. I think in terms of how you go about it, I think a lot of it will come from the attitude that you have, and the kind of patience that you have, and a lot of it would come from the kind of peer pressure that you feel around you. So a lot of millennials prefer to spend money on their present lifestyles and experiences rather than saving for the future. And given the cost of living, savings for a big ticket expenses like a house can be unsettling, because it would require continued investments over a long period of time. However, living in present and enjoying your life is kind of very well, and you should do that. However, people know that they should be saving, but they kind of upgrade their lifestyles to a point where they can't save. So in my experience, as you start your career, as you go about your career, having a lifestyle is very important. However, the more important is that you should have a lifestyle which you can easily sustain, even with fluctuations in your income. This situation would be far better to upgrade your lifestyle to a point where you have to run from pillar to post just to sustain it. So and one of the key pieces here is that in terms of attitude, today's youth need to have is that comparing yourself with what others have. I think that's a key point, kind of which kind of influences the spending pattern of today's youth. Though as I said, that consumerism is at its peak and savings is at its lowest in the last 10 years in India, vis-a-vis what it was in the previous years. However, another person's finances are good or bad cannot pay bills, and almost 80% of the millennials, the early stage professionals, the early stage people in the early stage, I mean people who are in their early stage career, are kind of live paycheck to paycheck. So they are in a situation where they are more kind of attuned to buy things which they don't need, and they are not able to save. So I think the point is that however small, you should have a habit of saving and investing right from day one. And comparing yourself to others in terms of what they have is something which will create havoc in your, not only in your financial discipline, but to your mental peace as well. So that's the attitude with which you would have to start your career, and rather than kind of in a habit wherein you are spending on unnecessary things, I think anything that you can do to develop your own ability is likely to be more productive and is likely to give you a huge amount of satisfaction. So I would say that be very eager to pick up that new skill, be very eager to learn something new, be very eager to work hard, but don't be so anxious to have an extravagant lifestyle at an early stage in your career. So enjoy the pace at which you are growing, and if you and if there are people around you, who are support you, who kind of encourage you, then you are amongst the lot who are blessed. So I think this was my piece in terms of how should you go about in terms of financial discipline. And as I said, a lot of it will come from your attitude and how you think about what is your definition of being successful at an early stage in career. So I would end this particular topic by quoting something which the richest man, one of the richest man on earth, Warren Buffett, says in one of the books called Getting There, which is written by Gillian Zosegel. And what he says is that there is no secret to success. There is no formula for success or making money. It is only discipline, perseverance, and hard work, which gives you a lot of satisfaction and pays you over a period of time. I think one of the examples that he, kind of a very beautiful example that he, gives is that, let's say that, you're offered a car of your dreams, at a very early stage in your life, and somebody wants to, gives you a choice that you have an option to pick a car of your dreams, whichever car you like on earth, and you don't have to pay a penny for it. It will be gifted to you. So you typically would go about and picking up your car. However, the caveat is that it's the only car that you will get in your life, and you won't get a new car after that. So how do you keep that car for the rest of your life? You're probably going to read the manuals, owner's manual 4 times before you drive that car. You will kind of keep it in a garage. You will protect it all the times. You will change the oil twice, as often as necessary. And if there is even a little bit of rust, you will get that fixed immediately. So that's how you would go about that car for the rest of your life. And so Warren Buffett says that think of that car as your mind and body, and which you have to take care for the rest of your life. And you should take care of your mind and body in the similar manner as you would have taken care of that car. Because if you don't, 10 years down the line, you will be left with a car which won't take you anywhere. So I think that should sum it up in terms of how, mentally you should go about your career and finances. The second piece that I had was that which I wanted to talk about was that as you kind of step into corporate world, straight out of college academics, there are 3 things that typically are observed in terms of the hurdles or that a newly graduated guy or a girl kind of faces in the corporate world. The first one is feedback. I think you would straight come out of an environment where you had a mechanism where where you were kind of evaluated on certain parameters which were very well defined, and there was a proper system of getting graded, and there was a proper system of giving feedback in terms of how much you scored and how well you did in your examinations. However, when you get into a corporate world, this is something that you will kind of you may struggle with, because when you land in a corporate scenario, most of the times things will be ambiguous, more so in the current environment. Doesn't matter you work with a MNC, it doesn't matter you work with an Indian company, it doesn't matter with you, doesn't matter if you work with a well-settled organization or if you work with a startup. I think the environments will be challenging, the competition will be intense, and today corporates, whether it's a huge corporate or whether it's a startup, expect their people, their managers to manage their resources in the most efficient way, and because resources are limited and they want it to be managed in the most efficient. So that's why the expectation from the younger generation is a lot more, because they're expected to come up with new ideas and fresh ideas, and and they are being looked at in terms of driving the future agenda. So however, having said that, when you land in there, there will be a fair amount of ambiguity there, and what you get as a feedback vis-a-vis what you got a feedback in your college would be very ambiguous. There would be times when you may have a manager, or you may have a senior who may not be able to give you a very specific feedback in terms of how you're performing. So you will have to deal with a lot of ambiguity in terms of getting feedback. It would not be only about things, about being objective things. It will be also behavioral. So I think one of the things that the younger lot, or the people who step into corporate world, the change that they see is that they have to deal with a little bit of a lot of ambiguous feedbacks, wherein they have to figure out how do they want to go about it, and what to filter and what not to filter, and what to action upon. If you have a manager in corporate world who is who is willing to invest time in you, you are maybe in the top 10 to 20% luckiest people out there. So the second piece that I feel that the younger generation, or the fresh graduates kind of deal with in a corporate world is kind of relationship building. uh, when you are in a environment, in a college environment, or in a B school, or any other environment where you are studying, you don't have a pressure to build relationships with people whom you don't like. You can hang out with people who are like-minded, and whom you feel comfortable with. However, when you step into corporate world, uh, you know uh, the purpose of building good professional relationships is not only uh, to hang out with people whom you like, but also to understand the view from the other side, even if you kind of don't like the personality that you're dealing with. So I think one of the key things that I've seen in these the fresh graduates, and the fresh batch, is that they struggle to kind of build relationships, corporate relationships, professional relationships, successful relationships, whether it is with peers, whether it is with their bosses, and at some point in time whether it is their juniors. So I think however the importance of building good corporate relationships cannot be stressed more, because it is something which will take you really far in your career. So I think this is something which you will face once you enter into a corporate scenario, that you have to kind of keep up with and deal with people even if you don't like them. The third piece is that I have seen over the years is accountability. And this is not to say that people who kind of graduate step in the corporate world are not accountable. They are, and they are the people who are responsible as well. However, the difference that you would see in a corporate setting is that while you are studying, most of your actions would kind of impact yourself only. So if you don't do well in exams, it's kind of impact you only. And there would be settings wherein you would have to do a project work and collaborate with people. However, these kind of things will be much more in a corporate setting. And your actions would not only impact you, but also impact the team that you are part of, and eventually it will also impact the overall organization. So from that point of view, you will see that you are for your actions, you are not only kind of accountable to yourself, but you are accountable to a larger group. and your actions will kind of impact a larger audience. So I think these are the three things. There could be many other things, but I think these are the three softer aspects, kind of, which you will realize over a period of time once you step into the corporate world. So I think I'm not taking any more time. I think I've kind of taken 20 minutes here. So that was my take on the subjects that were given to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure it must have cleared all our doubts regarding the agenda. So before moving forward to the next speaker, I would like to clear a query from a lot of attendees. The feedback form will be circulated in the chat box soon. So now we move on to the last speaker of the day, Mr. Vipin Kapuria. He has an ample of experience of steering through the financial crux of various industries, such as e-commerce, consumer durables, retail, and information technology. Well accomplished with expertise in investment decision evaluation and business partnering, Mr. Vipin Kapuria is the Vice President of Business Finance at OYO and the ex-Director of Business Finance at Flipkart. He has an enriching proficiency of working in the financial sector for the past 14 years. He is a chartered accountant and a seasoned financial analyst who has worked at top management positions with eminent and renowned companies like Yum Restaurants International, Whirlpool, Birlasoft, etc. We will now give the space to Vipin sir.
Thanks, Ishika. Am I audible? Just checking for
yes, sir, totally.
connectivity.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Great. First of all, thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially Mr. Jatinder and Miss Guminder Kaur for having us all here. And if it was a physical group that we were having a chat with, I would essentially want everyone to say a loud cheer so that I am sure that everyone is awake. But I just assume that after an hour of really enriching discussion with our panelists, people can surely give a hand, wave of hand or something just to say that they are all there. So I wish everyone is having a good time, because I think the points that both Saurabh and Pankaj covered were really enriching for me personally, and I had a great time listening to them. But I would assume that being the third speaker on the panel, would seem like you've had your starters and your main course. Now is the dessert time. So I'll hope that all of you are attentive, and I will look forward to your questions on the topic that I am talking about. Just I don't have too many as such a deck as such, but just for reference perspective, I'll just refer to some slides here. So can I just share slides here?
Yes, sir.
Can I share my screen? Just give me a second. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I just, the discussion that we were doing is impact of COVID on businesses and careers. And, just breaking down the discussion into three broad areas, where I'll cover the impact of, COVID is having on businesses, careers very briefly, because I'm sure that you had this discussion earlier, and every one of us is aware of the kind of severity that the pandemic is having on the businesses, economic activity. So the second piece would be, what steps businesses and startups are taking to combat the current crisis. I'll dwell upon some of the things that I've personally been part of. And third bit is the what lies ahead part. Just to concentrate on the just summarizing the impact of COVID that is having. I think it can be clubbed into three broad areas. First of all, we are in the midst of a global pandemic which has infected more than now I think 1.2 million across the world, and has resulted in more than I think 500,000 deaths. Unfortunately, the pandemic has had a devastating impact on the economic activity as well across the world due to the various lockdowns and obviously restricted human activity. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Loud
Yes,
and clear.
sir.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the unusual times, require extraordinary responses. And apart from short-term tactical maneuvers, the CFOs along with the leadership group on in these times are having to strategize both the long-term as well as taking the short-term actions. And this requires this has been forcing people to take a very sharp and dispassionate assessment of the current situation because of the complexities involved. And we've seen that the impact has been very different on different sectors. Different sectors have reacted differently. Some have benefited. The education tech is come a long way in terms of acceptability across the people across educational institutions, and people have believed that this is the way going forward. In fact, some haven't been much impacted. Some have been hit moderately, and many others are struggling to even sustain and are striving hard to keep themselves afloat. Unfortunately, the industry I'm part of currently, the hospitality industry, Oyo Rooms, is significantly impacted. In the last 3 months, we have seen our revenues down by almost 95%. And we have been taking, we have been forced to take a lot of actions. Some of them not really, really very favorable ones or very popular ones. But I think that's been the times, and that's been the demand of these times. I do believe the recovery curve. We've been hearing all kinds of curve: V curve, U curve, L curve. I don't know which new curve would come. But for any industry or organization, it will vary on, I believe, three things. Uh, the products, the services that you are being providing, in fact, depending on what product or what industry you're part of, the competitive position that you have in the market, and the geography, finally, that you operate in. Looking at the scenario today, I would say overall, as a business, as an economy, anything north of 18 months looks to be a time horizon beyond which you can look at industries, most industries and organizations to recover. So this is what I would refer to as the impact of businesses had, the impact COVID has had on businesses. Moving on to the what are the steps that businesses and startups, especially within that, are taking to combat this current crisis. Uh, I would club them into three broad buckets. The first and foremost being all the businesses across, and whether it is startups or any other organization. I think the first and primary motive has been how do we protect our employees and customers. And there have been slews of measures, taken to ensure that the employees who are the frontline, especially, they are working under strict standard operating procedures, and there is absolutely no cause for concern from this from for their safety and security. And also customers, these are different times, so the message around safety and security and the goods or services being tenable and perfectly hygienic cannot be stressed more. To give you an example, especially for Oyo Rooms, Oyo Rooms has come up with a sanitized stay concept, wherein and a zero touch standard operating procedure, where we have rolled out these two as industry leading measures, where we are saying we are kind of certifying that every stay at the properties that we manage are sanitized. And there is a bunch of things that are there are screens, there are sanitized stay at a particular frequency, and how you can check into a hotel right now without interacting or with minimal human interaction. So I think that has been the topmost priority of all the businesses. The second one I would say is conserve cash and cut down on discretionary costs, and this is very important, especially from a financial perspective, because as I told you, organizations have seen, especially in the hospitality, tourism, or service industries, plummet to near zero levels. So conserving cash and cutting down on all non-essential discretionary costs was a permanent one. To give an example, how say a company like Oyo responded to it, we had a war room set up for senior leaders who were there to tackle immediate challenges that were available, that we were facing. We built in financial scenarios for immediate future, and also couple of months or 3 months down the line in terms of what could scenarios be like, so that we were ready with our responses much ahead of what it would be. So when we know that we are heading towards an X scenario, we would already have our steps 1, 2, 3, or actions 1, 2, 3 defined to mitigate any business impact that we would get into. Just to give you examples, when we built scenarios, we got to know that this could extend much beyond, at least the lockdowns would extend to at least 3 months, if not more. We went into, looking at our contracts, all our fixed costs. We had close to, some 100 crores of monthly payouts that were there to, landlord owners. And we got into reviewing our contracts and what were what were our rights, legal rights are relevant or available to us, and we happened to issue force majeure notices wherever we had to. Second, also, we got into negotiations and also talking to our vendors as well as, partners who we deal with, from whom we take real estate assets, in terms of what could they do for us in terms of deferring costs or, providing us relief during this period. So these were, the bunch of actions that we took on this side. Cash conservation, as I said, was of prime importance, and you would typically find every company going through it. So you had challenges in terms of, whenever we have, obviously we have a lot of corporate receivables outstanding at any given point of time, and the challenge was to how do we get those collections coming to us. And obviously the flow was not as it used to be pre-COVID, and we were forced to then revisit our cash flow plans in terms of what could be or how frequently could we pay to our vendors also. So just being on the, from a finance perspective, it was a very big task in terms of getting all your cash flow analysis and your cash flows projections in one place, revisiting all those, and in fact suggesting what needed to be done in order to be keeping the business afloat and keeping liquidity in the business. The third one, I would say, adapt to the new environment, and that's very critical because while you are mitigating all this, you also need to find a way to run business, generate revenues. And I'll give you an example of how our industry or our company adapted to the new environment. Was about whenever we got this, there was no customers going to come in, or very less travel, restricted travel that is going to be there. We dipped into our corporate actions or institutional revenue channels, wherein we contacted the hospitals and in fact at times even the district administration for quarantine centers, and the need for converting hotels into quarantine centers and generating B2B demand. That's a business to business demand. I think it was not sufficient to cover up to the levels that we were pre-COVID, but at least it got us some revenue to be flowing in and to keep the business going and keep the money flowing in and the business running. So I think adapting to the new environment is a key where businesses need to look at what is happening, take stock, and then change their portfolio, maneuver the products which make sense right now. For example, any luxury thing or any non-essentials or the wants of the world maybe on the back burner, and you would have all the needs coming out. So people need a lot of whatever people need, that is going to be in demand, and you need to pivot towards having your portfolio filled up with these kind of revenue or services. That will be the aspect of how businesses are responding. And you would have seen it's just not Oyo, but any other industry. People have on Zomato deliveries. People have come up with contactless deliveries. You don't need to contact. You don't need to pick the delivery from the person there. Domino's has launched in even essentials deliveries. So they are into pizza delivery, but since they have a delivery force, not many orders, they are delivering the essentials. They are delivering your groceries also. So I think being aware of your surroundings and making the necessary changes to keep the cash register is going is the reason or is the call of the day. I think that's what everyone is doing around. So that's the area. That's the part on the how are companies, businesses, startups combating the current crisis. And talking about what lies ahead in terms of what is the road ahead, what could be afterwards, what could be the as everyone keeps saying, what could be the new normal, or once pandemic is over, or how could things look like. I believe there are several unknowns, and the situation is still an enigma. No one actually knows how this frantic crisis will play out or eventually end. There are many hypotheses and scenarios that are being published daily, but the fact of the matter is, until there is an approved vaccine, definitive treatment, or herd immunity, it is too early to comprehend the full and ultimate, economic impact of this pandemic on any economy or industry or organization. We can never be certain. It's been unlike anything we have ever encountered before in our lifetime. Um, and in the current context, what makes it even more complex is the fact that there are continuous shifts happening. There are policy shifts happening, or there are shifts happening in terms of regulations. So you find out today, as an industry, hospitality industry, I can tell you, we keep flipping through government announcements as to which state or city is today under lockdown, or today is open, because that also tends to impact our business materially. So there are shifts happening on many fronts: regulations, macroeconomics. How will the liquidity be there? What are the rates of interest? How is the macro factors going to play out? Geopolitics. You know, um, uh, I think Pankaj mentioned about there are so many industries, and even Saras mentioned about there are, with the China tension happening, you never know which industries might be today starved of their the raw materials. Pharma industries depend on China for APIs. That could be a big impact if tensions continue this way, or in fact even they escalate. So geopolitics shifts are happening. Industry shift is happening. Aviation is going to be changed for some time now. Hospitality is going to be a changed industry for some time now. So technology is changing. Touch technology, or there will be a very big boost on technology availability, AIs, and the prolonged restrictions on people to be freely moving outside. This will continue. So human behavior is going to change. So in that current context, it is very complex in terms of how do you really find, what you really define as to, with all these changes happening, what is going to be the new normal. So I think what we also must remember, that too much focus on the specific of the situation, we also can't constrain our strategic thinking. So I believe the key to businesses emerging out of this crisis, will be the three principles. First one being protect, and as I talked about, protection for employees, protection for customers, protection for the business. So basically, what is protection? That's the definition of protection. Recover, recover business, and redo. So if I talk about, which are the firms that are going to be great or will emerge victorious, or I would say sustained after this, firms that balance protecting and running of the business today with retooling the business for tomorrow will outrun the extinction and will thrive after the pandemic. So I think, just to elaborate on the protect part, protection, as I talked, also earlier mentioned, employees and customers continue to be the first priority, topmost priority of all businesses. And the second portion of the protection part will be, protection of the business viability and ensuring business continuity and stability. Because all businesses exist to generate profits. So it's very important that businesses also continue to find a way of protecting themselves and being, afloat. The second piece is about recovery. How do businesses recover? And it is going to be a very dynamic aspect of coming out of this pandemic, because as I mentioned, all the scenario shifting that happens almost on a continuous basis, and nobody can say what is going to be consistent business environment for the next 15 days or a month. Nobody can say for certainty. So I think what it's calling for is forecasting your demand by geography, channel, and segment. So being very granular with your business planning, developing, your or converting rather your operational organization into a more flexible one, and always having financial plans to capture a demand supply equation. You should always be flexible as to what needs to be done in terms of if there is a particular line of business or particular line of products that needs to push through, that needs to be taken care of. That's going to be the key. And then third, I think recovery will also mean that you prepare a cost structure which is viable for the this new viable for the future, and you have a balance sheet which can sustain for the future and enable you to acquire new capabilities, because you will have to invest in certain things and certain areas. And that's my third point, about the retooling of the business. Retooling basically refers to the dynamic changes that one will have to make in order to be relevant in the new world. I imagine it to be as rediscovering the customer need, as to, because if you were a particular organization, you'll have to find out what does the customer need right now. It may be your product, or maybe something which is a partnership that you need to do with some other player in order to be relevant to the customer's need. Rethinking on strategic priorities, you know businesses will have to either invest in or acquire capabilities which get them ahead of the curve on, or ahead of competition in their industry. They'll have to be the first ones to think of what will work in the future. I think, and the third one, we all know, using digitization and partnerships to become more resilient, more relevant, and build scale and speed is going to be the key. The technologies today is not an option. I don't think of any business in the future which does not have a very credible, significant, digital channel or an online strategy. Even cars today are being sold, online. Something which might be a very a quirky thing or a very new thing for some players like Kia, Mahindra and Mahindra. They were online. They were selling online cars, but today it has become a reality. I mean, with the current scenario, a lot of cars are being sold online, and who knows, that could become a permanent channel once even the pandemic is over. So I think those are the things that we'll have to all the organizations and businesses will have to continuously do, invest into technology, digitization, and in order to be relevant. Having said that, all this things, I believe we need to also balance realism with some optimism. Hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. Right? While we confront the most brutal facts of our current reality, we must also, have the faith to believe that the human race, will prevail at the end. As they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I think that's what I would sum up my presentation or my discussion about. I just will take one more minute. I hope I'm not running out of time. But as a suggestion to students, because they're all coming out of be entering the real world, I would have just two advices for all of you. I think very famously Steve Jobs mentioned in his address at I think Stanford or Oxford, about the ability to stay hungry and stay foolish. I think it very well captures the philosophy that could be the ethos of what you believe in. I think staying hungry is all about being always willing to not satisfied with what you have, And stay foolish meaning, you always are looking for know-how or knowledge, or seeking knowledge wherever is possible. I think those two words, this slogan stays with me, and gives me always the inspiration to continue on this path of staying hungry and staying foolish. So all the best to all of you in your careers ahead.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable views. And I'm sure this was much insightful for the attendees. Without taking much time, we shall move ahead to the next segment, that is the question answers round. I would like to invite Aryan to proceed with the same.
Thank you for the enlightening words, sir. Thank you, Ishika. Now we will entertain a set of questions that we have received from our audience. Starting now, we would request the attendees to be precise with their questions, and it would be better if you can mention the speaker whom you would like to ask the question. The first question is for you, Pankaj, sir. How can a highly populous country like India, with an underfunded education system, make its students financially literate?
The Indian environment and the Indian ethos is such that you automatically get trained on the financial management. All the individuals, whether customer or the seller, are basically business minded. So we know how to extract the best out of every product, and we also know how to maximize our profits. So you go and, I mean, even when you go and buy vegetables, you can see how people are negotiating and trying to get the best out of the negotiation. And similarly, when you are marketing your product, you are trying to sell more. Indian consumers are such that they use the best out of every. The famous example of using a toothbrush, and after a few weeks or months, you say, okay, now it's no more, I can brush my teeth with it, so I will use it for for some other purpose, maybe putting into using as a hair dye, or later on use it for putting something inside a cloth. So all that possibility, I mean, the consumer actually gets the best out of it. So financial management is ingrained in the Indian ethos. So I would say that basic is available, but yes, when you go into an advanced knowledge and technology which is available today due to COVID, I mean, you can acquire a lot of a skill set globally. Even you can do courses from Harvard and all the big names that you have heard of, and without much cost. And there are so many free courses available. So Indian students can actually use this opportunity currently to maximize their returns.
Thank you, sir. Very beautifully answered. The next question is for Saurabh, sir. How can we start educating ourselves about the financial system? Saurabh, sir, am I audible?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, there is no very complex answer to that. It's a very simple thing that if you want to educate yourself about something, your actions and your energies or efforts have to be directed in that manner. So you would want to, if you want to learn about finance, and in terms of basic concepts of finance and things like that, you'll have to do a lot of content reading, whether it is online or offline. You will have to start with that. There are a lot of tech platforms available now which were not there 5-7 years back, with respect to in terms of educating people about basic finance concepts and how to go about financial calculations in the easiest manner possible. So I think a lot of reading online, offline, using the technology that is available there, talking to experts. In today's world, it's so easy to connect with experts and people who carry knowledge on various subject matters, whether it is finance or something else. It's so easy. So you can get connected to so many people out there and take their perspective, take a financial course, basic financial course. So I think these are the things that you would one would want to do to gain basic knowledge about the and financial system or finance, or basic concepts of finance. So that's about it. And giving you an example, my father is a, is a chemical engineer, and all his life he has kind of dealt with technical stuff. But if I look at him, he understands finance as well, so very well, that at times he's kind of in a he's able to kind of enter into a debate or an argument even on finance topics, and that's because he has been kind of investing time and reading about things on finance, which kind of interests him, and over the years he has been able to gather that kind of knowledge. So I think the whatever small effort you want to put in, invest some time in there, whatever interests you, and if you're investing time in something which interests you, it will not kind of pinch you. So start reading, take a financial course, talk, get connected with experts, and I think the world is open. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure that has cleared all our doubts. The next question from the audience is for Vipin, sir. The next question is for Vipin, sir. An action plan taken by OYO to grant ESOP for worth rupees 130 crores can be seen as a recovery booster or as a last resort. Can there be a rights issue as well?
So I don't think we have rights issues in startups. I mean, RSUs are also restricted. They're in lieu of stocks, so they are not, their rights and not stocks as such. I think what OYO has done is unprecedented in terms of startup world, wherein all the people who have been on leave with limited benefits, as well as any people in the company right now, but not receiving or are having salary cuts, have opted for salary cuts. They are being given RSUs of that value and not at a strike price. So usually you get a ESOP at a strike price and you get the differential as the benefit. But here they have been issued almost at nominal values. So I think it's a huge wealth creator, because it has been done across levels. And at startups, usually it happens at a grade, at a particular grade and above only. So I think it's the deposition of faith that the organization has in its employees and does understand the kind of hardships that they are going through for the sake of the company. And as a startup also, there is limited resources that one has. So I think parting with equity is the best that could have been done. And I think OYO's taken that step for all its employees, and I think it's a great gesture.
Yes. Thank you for the amazing insights, sir. The next question is for Pankaj, sir. Many of us may start our first jobs in the coming 6 to 18 months. So what are the most important principles that we should always stand by to properly managing our finances from the very start itself?
The most important thing is that you have to treat the company money as your own money. So the company checkbook has to be dealt in the same fashion as you handle your personal checkbook. As I already mentioned, the Indian mind is very business oriented. Almost everyone is, whether he is just a customer and never started any enterprise, but he is still, the business mind is still there. So the students have to really look at that the basic learning of an individual that he has acquired over the period of time is very useful in the corporate world when you enter. And therefore you have to, what you are practically doing it on a personal level, that is what we have to bring forward. And some of the other tips that I already gave about lean management or looking at flexibility in the organization, and taking some smart steps as a finance head, like OYO just did. I mean, I just heard Vipin, hats off to the person and the team which decided that So you have to really be very progressive when you enter into the corporate world. And these are the initiatives that you have to think and create a brand of yourself where you say that I care for my employees, I care for my stakeholders, I really want them together at this time of at this stressful time also. So people, all the students must learn out of this so that they can practically implement when they go into the corporate world or they start their own enterprise. They have to create that value proposition for which they stand, and what creates an imagery and the brand.
That was a very valuable addition to our knowledge, sir. Thank you. The next question is addressed to Vipin, sir. What advice would you give to our attendees to combat the current situation and how to deal with it with more sustainability?
I think Vipin is
your
on.
mic is,
Sir, you're on mute.
your mic is mute.
Sorry. I couldn't get the question in terms of sustainability or from as students or as finance professionals.
So as students, sir.
I think all of us, and I would say as students, what they need to be doing. My advice would be, observing keenly how organizations are reacting to this, and because I hope that we do not see any pandemic of this scale in our near future or even foreseeable future. But I do see that it's a great learning time in terms of how best to and we can obviously get experience or keep these notings or these learnings as your experience. And God forbid, if there is some kind of a in future, if you get into some kind of a crisis, you can lean back on these learnings as to what needs to be done and what is the right way of reacting to it. What are the proactive actions to be taken in such way in such times, both at a business level and also at a personal level. And also treat this as I kind of would say a wake up call in terms of the consumerism that we are all going through, and the need for, spending a lot on our wants than on needs. I think it tells us a story that jobs are all fickle. We are all in times where we could have a real scenario of job loss. So on a personal finance perspective, planning for at least a 6-month kind of sustainability without say a steady flow of income like salary should be on top of everybody's agenda.
Thank you for the amazing insight, sir. Since we are short on time, this will be the last question for today. The question is addressed to Saurabh, sir. In the fund management industry, there is a continuous debate about active and passive investing. So what, according to you, is the future of investing?
So I'm kind of assuming here that the question talks about whether we can build a passive income apart from what we are doing. Is that the question? Is my understanding?
Yes, sir. There's a lot of talk about multiple streams of income. So that is what we...
All right. So I think I'll keep it very short. And I think, building a passive income is not at all a, incorrect thought. It's absolutely fine to try to build a passive income. And, youngsters, especially youngsters do, try to do that. There are 2-3 things that one has to be very mindful in terms of while building a passive income. And whether you are kind of into building your YouTube channel, or you're writing a blog, or you want to write a book, it has to it has to come out of your area of interest first. You can't build a passive income out of an area wherein you have seen somebody making a lot of money and you just want to get into that because somebody else has made a lot of money out of that. So it has to come straight out of your interest first of all. Second is, building passive income takes a lot of time, because first, if you are kind of really interested in that, then the next piece that will come in is that you have to put in a lot of time, energy, and hard work to build a relevant content, because there are so many people out there building beautiful content. So you would be kind of competing with so many people out there, and at the end of the day, if you want to attract large masses, I think in your passive income, through which you want to earn passive income, you have to have some meaningful and relevant content for which you have to invest fair amount of time, energy, and maybe resources as well. So nothing will happen overnight, and the incomes will not get get developed it will only get developed over a period of time. So you have to be very patient with that and very consistent in your effort. So I think these are the two important things while building a passive income, and that's my take on that.
That was indeed very enlightening, sir. I would like to thank the speakers for they have so beautifully answered the questions of the audience, which must have cleared all the doubts. With this, I would like to give the space to Aditya. Over to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Arun. I would first like to thank our honorable speakers who have shared the virtual dais with us today. It has been an absolute delight listening to all you, sir. Also, I would like to extend my sincerest thanks to our principal, Dr. Jitendra B. Singh, sir, our convener, Dr. Kaval Gill, ma'am, and our HOD Commerce, Dr. Gurminder Kaur, ma'am, for guiding us and supporting us all throughout this journey to organizing this event. Also, I would like to extend my sincerest and deepest thanks to all the attendees that have joined us from all across the country and globe. Also, I would like to mention the faculty team of ISB College and the faculty team of Sri Guru Gobind Singh College of Commerce to supporting us in our initiatives. With that, I would like to announce the website for Department of Commerce for Sri Guru Gobind Singh College of Commerce. We officially released it today. Today is a very important day for us. And the link for the feedback form will be circulated in the Zoom chat box as well as in the YouTube comment box. Please do fill it. Also, I would like to invite Gursadak to say a few words.
Yeah, so with this, we officially end our webinar. The attendees can now exit the meeting and fill the feedback form on our website. I request the speakers, our team, and the faculty of SDG to stay with us for a few minutes. Thank you. Please do remember to fill the feedback form on our website. The link is in the comment section of YouTube and the chat section of Zoom. I request the team Urja and the faculty to turn on the camera so that we can have a snapshot. Kaval ma'am, Gurminder ma'am, sir. The attendees can now exit the meeting and fill the feedback form on our website. The link for the same is in the chat section of Zoom and the comment section of YouTube. We'll also circulate the links to the WhatsApp groups we have made. We still have a few people with us. Just 2 minutes. I request the faculty to turn on the cameras as well.